most people think of when they hear the word drugs? Maybe they think of the war on drugs or overdose deaths that's been in the recent news. Maybe they think, I take too many drugs, like the kind you buy at the pharmacy. Well, in any case, there are a lot of things that can be discussed about this subject, and today I hope to enlighten you with a few tidbits I have researched. When it comes to regulating legal and illegal drugs in the U.S., there are two main government agencies, the Food and Drug Administration and the Drug Enforcement Agency. The FDA regulates the legal drugs that are dispensed at the pharmacy, and the DEA usually enforces drug laws for all controlled substances. An interesting fact about controlled substances, they are classified into 3 categories and 5 classes. So the first category is Class 1 controlled substances. They're your illegal drugs that include but are not limited to heroin, cocaine, crystal meth. Class 2 controlled substances are the legal ones, but they are the most restrictive class, and they include but are not limited to medications such as oxycodone, hydrocodone, Adderall, and morphine. They require a new prescription every time they're filled at the pharmacy. So all other controlled substances are classified in the C3 through 5 category. And they're lumped in that category because each drug will be a 3, a 4, or 5, but they follow different prescribing procedures, such as you can have refills on those if the doctor so chooses. Each drug is put in a certain drug class depending upon how addictive the substance is. So the more addictive the drug, the higher the classification is, but the lower the number, I guess, just to confuse people. Another interesting fact about controlled substances is that the Class 1 drug heroin is illegal, but the Class 2 drug fentanyl, which is 50 times more potent than heroin, is legal and available by prescription. Who knew, right? So, some stats for you. Everyone's heard of the opioid crisis. So, every day, more than 130 people in the U.S. die after overdosing on opioids. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimates that the total economic burden of prescription opioid misuse alone in the U.S. is $78.5 billion a year, and they're including costs of healthcare, lost productivity, addiction treatments, and criminal justice involvement. Other drugs that are available, which are legal, are the ones that are known to save lives, help treat medical conditions, or help patients cope with medical symptoms. And these drugs can range from heart and blood pressure meds to psychiatric meds, and they help from anything from tremors to relieving constipation. However, be aware, the side effects of taking medication can include, but are not limited to, heartburn, nausea, vomiting, gas, diarrhea, constipation, weight loss, weight gain, blurry vision, heart palpitation, dizziness, sleepiness, nervousness, headache, excessive sweating, dry mouth, memory loss, tremors, difficulty speaking, hebitude, coma, and death. Doesn't everyone want to go out to the pharmacy now and pick up those drugs? Yeah. Exactly. But the medical advances that have been made in the past century are truly amazing. Did you know there is now a cure for HIV? Anyway? That's because the news of that has not been widely spread because the cure, they say, is worse than the treatment. The cure is much like a blood transfusion, but more invasive, if that's even possible. The treatment is you take a medication regimen, and so most people with HIV choose to stick with the meds rather than the cure, which is a risky and painful surgery. So it's pretty interesting. The question that is most asked is, why are my medications so expensive? Well, let me walk you through the process of getting a drug to market. It's pretty lengthy. So step 1, drug discovery and target validation. This is where a drug manufacturer will choose which gene or protein in the body to target with said drug. So think a lot of scientists in lab coats doing their thing. This process will also confirm that the molecule is involved with the actual disease in question. Step 2, preclinical testing. Testing will begin in vitro, which is in test tubes or petri dishes. Then it moves to in vivo, which is on animal models and other living cell structures. By the time this phase is completed, many years have passed due to the rigorous testing that must occur before FDA approval. Step 3, investigational new drug application filing. This is when the application to the FDA is filed so that human trials can begin, and this is the point when the patent drug begins its 20-year exclusivity. So when a brand drug is brought to market, they have 20 years to sell it or what have you until the patent expires and the generic drug can become available. Step 4, phase 1 clinical trials. These are human trials with a small group, about a dozen or so of relatively healthy people. It focuses on how the drug is absorbed and eliminated throughout the body and any side effects that may occur. Step 5 is phase 2 clinical studies. The patient pool widens to perhaps 100 or more patients of usually people who are afflicted with the disease. Step 6 is phase 3 clinical studies. The patient pool widens to a few hundred to maybe thousands. And this is by far the most expensive of all the steps in the drug development process because the FDA wants clearly defined endpoints to determine the success or failure of the tested drug. Step 7, we're almost there, new drug application filing. This stage isn't the point where the FDA must decide to approve or deny. It's merely a stepping stone that says it promises to review the application over the next 10 months. However, this date can be postponed or the FDA can rule early if they so choose. Step 8 is the date and the decision. Often this is when the FDA will wait to make its decision because essentially it has 3 choices. Approve it, outright deny it, which is very rare, or request additional testing information or possibly altering of the manufacturing process. And step 9, the final, technically an approved drug can make it to your medicine cabinet after step 8, but step 9 is the step where the FDA still requests long-term studies of how patients will be affected when taking this drug over an extended period of time. All that being said, it costs a lot of money and they unfortunately have to pass it on to the consumer. Thanks for letting me share.